nhớ rằng là cứ lúc bây giờ tia ya lì nó là cụ đó cụ ít nhiều lo thả cho nên tụi mình tu theo là chính nên cho journey cho cái tụi mình tu khó autism diagnosis cụ tự hóa là đó chính nên mua autism cho cậu tôi không nói lại cụ hóa là đó cho mình cái đó cụ mua clients cho mình cái đó cũng như hóa là đó clients cho mình cũng mua appealing cho đứa hậu ấy Chinese law Korean 但是佢又可唔可以都可以音方式嘅個可能你問我你上單啊個比個 Facebook group 聽個個 podcast 啊佢又可把佢聽個我阿邊拎就年來聽今年一下個今年誒麼咪有麼 autism 個咪大家散係聽thôi yêu bao hay tiệm lúa tên mua autism rồi chỉ là lúa tên tên mình chỉ là lúa tên tụi mình nhỏ trong đó thì cô cho sinh tử cô yêu chú ba cô yêu chú kia lời hay tiệm cô nhỏ nó mua questions đó chỉ là cô mà đi tên so nó nào cô đó cô tụi nhiều hồ tham hay là có mua cô học podcast nào có mua questions cái sản nó cô thọ cái message cô cô trong chia sẻ đó cái questions thế đó có thả đây cái questions bảo đi cô thấy tao. Hello. On today's episode, I reached out to a dear cousin of mine. In the last few years, she has shared about her child having autism and being in the field. I wanted to be a support for her and provide information, disseminate information with, and definitely help guide her if she needed my help. And she's been really, you know, great about just coming to ask questions when she had them. And this whole journey has really been about disseminating, for me as a professional, to disseminate information. And then, the thing about autism is that, the CDC numbers have come out, and I believe, oh my gosh, don't quote me. I think it's like 1 in 30 something, right? So it's getting more prevalent. And that almost also means that almost all of us, we know someone whose child has autism. And when I started this journey 2 years ago with doing outreach in the Hmong community, I will say I was very surprised. I shouldn't have been, but I was very surprised to have found out that there were a lot of people that I knew whose kiddos had autism, and that really fueled me even more to be that, disseminating information. And also, this podcast was created hopefully for của trong phương Yi thế của cho chính là a might have a kid with autism, just to know that I'm here as a support. There's a whole community. There's a whole league of professionals here. And before we get started, I do want to remind myself and my guests that this podcast is let's talk about oh my gosh, let's talk about autism in Hmonglish. We don't even talk in Hmong to each other, so I don't know how we're going to do today. I think it'll be fine. So my first my guest is um, my sweet dear cousin Kristen, and I've invited her to share her journey through an autism diagnosis with me. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Hello. So, Kristen, I want to go ahead and just jump straight into the questions that we had talked about
Yeah.
beforehand about your journey through your son's autism diagnosis. So, can you tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about your kiddo and tell us at what age did you suspect your son might have signs of autism? Take a
Yeah.
hello molo, it's okay. Or if you forget,
Okay.
it's okay too.
People forget.
All right.
But yeah, my son, he is 4 years old now. He turned 4 in May. Um, and his name is Edison, and he's my last child. And I don't think we're gonna have any more after him. But yeah, he I would say that around 10 months to like 1 year period, I really observed him a lot. He was a COVID baby, so it was like, the world was shut down, and I was just like, okay, maybe it was tricky because he was so young, and there was just a point in time that he was developing like your regular babies. He had his first word, like mama was his first word.
Mhm.
And he was very like easy and laid back compared to my daughter, who was like just you had to do everything her way or she'd just pitch a fit.
Mhm.
But my son was very laid back and very calm.
However, she's very sweet,
Yes,
very
now she's
loving,
she's
very
very
smart,
social,
bright.
very
Yes.
smart, very sweet. But as a baby, I was like, nope, we're not
Yes.
having anymore. She was-
Yeah. Didn't you say she was kinda colicky too, right? So
yeah.
mokwa, yeah, okay. So a lot of, high needs in that way.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, Edison was completely opposite of my daughter. So he was very calm. But I think what worried me most was when he suddenly stopped responding to his name. Like he was at one
Okay.
point was like Edison, and you know how like more people like or just in general like our like parents we like start
Mhm.
giving them nicknames, like
Mhm.
"Oh,
Mhm.
good," or just
Yeah.
whatever, and we're like calling him all these different names, and I'm like, maybe
Mhm.
that's why he stopped responding to his name, or like like we were calling him different things, and then I was like, maybe we just start saying Edison, and so.
Okay.
But yeah, we every time we said like Edison when he was little, he would look and he'd smile and
Mhm.
giggle, but like a lot of that just kind of stopped. I'd say like probably 9 to 10 months. Like you just
Okay.
noticed that he stopped responding to his name, and he stopped mimicking mama. Like when I say
Okay.
mama, and
Mhm.
he would stop. He wouldn't say anything, or and he didn't like start learning other words or like that. Like it was either like mama, dada, and then it wasn't like he's not consistent. He kind of stopped, and he wasn't saying any other words. So, and also like he was a late walker, and I know it's like
Mhm.
my daughter was late walker too because she was a little bit
Yeah.
rotten, so we carried her a lot. But he didn't walk until about 18 to 19 months, and usually I'm not
Okay.
concerned, but like he would walk with us holding his hand, but like if we let go of his
Mhm.
hand, he was like, nope, not doing it. He wasn't. But
Yeah.
he was a late walker, but like all these, I was just concerned about. Especially like especially when he hit the year mark and he wasn't walking and he wasn't saying words consistently, because I know like
Mhm.
from my first she was like very talkative, and by the age one like she was saying a lot of words, and so I was
Mhm.
like, this is unusual, so I just thought he was very independent and easygoing, that uh he just preferred to be alone, and he just like enjoyed playing with his toys quietly. So oh,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
independent and easygoing, and so and he just watched TV and he laughed and smiled, and he was just very happy just being by himself and the simple things,
Mhm.
but like I said, like I mentioned, like he grew up during the pandemic, so we weren't going out. So I just thought, at that time, like nothing was wrong with him. We were restricted to go anywhere. So but then like but because of all the not responding to his name, I reached out to his doctor just to get some advice, and she was like, boys sometimes they develop slower, and you just don't worry now, he's so young. And so like
At what age
this
was this?
I think I addressed it like at age 1, and she was like, yeah,
Okay, so 12
it was,
months.
she was like, he's still young.
Mhm.
And we'll just keep on like after, like during every visit, I just like would tell her like this is still not happening, or this is what I'm still
Mhm.
seeing. Um, and so she finally had him observed by a psychologist. The um, during that time, um, when we had him observed, she had mentioned that even during the pandemic, like the psychologist was saying, like she had mentioned that like a child should want to be acknowledged by his parents and siblings, like they're trying
Mhm.
to like they want you to praise them, love them, see them, um, And even if we were just home because it was the pandemic, and even if we were home and he hasn't been exposed to like other people around him, that he should, even at home, be interested in his family, like socializing with
Mhm.
us. But he wasn't. He was more
Mhm.
interested in his toys than socializing with us. So that was like the major red flag for us, when
Yeah.
he had mentioned that.
Yeah, and you said that he was a COVID pandemic baby, so, was he born during the pandemic, like, after March 2020?
Um,
I'm sorry,
He
remind
was
me
born
again.
in 2015. So like he was his first birthday fell in May, and the world shut down in March
2018.
2015.
He
So
was born in 2015? I
wait,
think that's Eleanor.
Eleanor. Yeah, 2019. He was born in 2019. I'm
19.
thinking
Okay,
about
because
Eleanor. Yeah.
yes, I think our kids, our first 2 are the same, like, age, right? So when you said 2015, I was like, "That's when my son was born." Okay, so he was born in 2019, in May, you said? In the spring of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, and then when he was around 1, that's when the whole world shut down,
Yes.
and so now you're like, you're definitely no exposure to people. It's just you
Mm-hmm.
guys at home.
Yeah.
That exposure to socialization wasn't happening. It couldn't happen, and it really the world shut down for 2 years. So from 1 to 3, it was very limited exposure to other people. So yeah, I bet there's like a whole league of kiddos born during that time that we're going to see some social skills that might be a little bit lacking, and it'll be very interesting. I'm sure there's some scientists out there doing some long-term studies already, but for sure. And then we add on, like how about our kiddos who are diagnosed with autism, like what are the impacts there. So how long did it take for you guys to get that diagnosis? From, you said you first noticed at about 10 months, and then when was he officially diagnosed,
He
Kristen?
was officially diagnosed, I'd say about 2.5. So,
Okay.
yeah. So we reached out when he was a year at his 1 year checkup. Um, and we had like psychologists and different people observed him in different settings. Then we officially got his diagnosis when he was 2.5.
Okay. And that kinda is my next question too, is, were you and your spouse on the same page in regards to the official diagnosis? And, like, what was it like in the beginning? And then at official diagnosis, like, um, do you mind to tell me more about that
Yeah.
experience?
Well, um, I'm a teacher, so I was more knowledgeable about the signs of autism. And
Mhm.
whereas my husband, he's more of like a traditional, person, grew up in a traditional home. He's not exposed to children with autism. So he had no idea what autism was. And as a mama, you can just see, you notice when things are unusual or different. So I kept telling my husband, like, I think he could possibly be autistic, and he's like,
Mhm.
what is all, what
Yeah.
does that even mean? But like he didn't think so, because he was like, oh, maybe it's just a speech delay, or like "Oh,
Mhm.
the luto, eh, ni chisa halusa," and
Mhm.
and a lot of people, sometimes you think that, when it's your
Yeah.
second child, and like you have a very social daughter who talks nonstop and talks for him, and we do everything for him,
Mhm.
I guess just maybe he's just, been wanting to luto, so, and that's why he's, just not want to do anything for himself. And so we're like, yeah, maybe, looking at the positive, yeah,
Mhm.
that might be it. And so, which of course, at the time we thought it could be, but after
Mhm.
his diagnosis at age 2, my husband and I, like, we weren't too surprised because, like, I've already given him like a lot of like heads up, and I've already noticed the signs that I've seen with my son. Um, and I've done like a lot of research, like when I was seeing these things, I was already like Googling stuff, like as a mom, you're like
Mhm.
Googling like
Oh,
eye
yeah.
contact, speech delay, like what's happening here, and how
Mhm.
I can help my son. And so like I was already preparing, like I think during the time, like before his diagnosis, and just the time that I seen signs, I think it was harder for me because I was like, okay, I think he might be, and I'm looking for all these resources, and I'm,
Mhm.
researching all these things to see if it was. And I would show my husband, like, you see this, it says this, and he does this, and he's like,
Mhm.
well, it's okay, like maybe he just, it's not that. And but like when we got the official diagnosis, I wasn't really shocked. My husband wasn't shocked because, I mean, again, it was a
Mhm.
year. It's been a year since we have seen
Right.
the symptoms and before his diagnosis. So we were already preparing ourselves, and I already kind of like, okay, I know he is. So it's like I did get the yes, he's autistic. Like, it didn't shock me as much, um, but I think I did a lot of research to see like how I can help my son and my husband. He really tried to understand it, but it was more to me doing the research because you're the mom, and
Mhm.
how to train my husband, on what it was, so that we were both on the same page, and
Yeah.
how we could teach him, what we could do, for him, and so regardless of his diagnosis, we wanted to be like the best parents for him. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually not, let me see, it is common
Yeah.
for both parents to kind of be on different wavelengths in the beginning and maybe even through the early intervention stage because it just varies. Sometimes it's the dad that's like seeking the diagnosis, and then sometimes it's the mom, and the dad's not on board, so it's really interesting to hear the different journeys and how parents kind of travel through that and kind of go, okay, but at least are we in agreement about getting support and treatment, and I mean, I see a lot of kids who are in treatment whose parents that I meet with monthly and they're still kind of unsure, but
Yeah.
they made the decision for treatment because that is ABA is the recommended treatment for or therapy for autism, right? To help with building those social skills and communication skills. So I'm really happy to hear that, Kristen, and thank you for being so forthcoming and sharing. I know I think through our groups that we've seen people share, it's everyone's on a different journey at different times, and um, I hope that this will be helpful to others who are kind of not ready and they're kind of unsure, and that's okay too. And like I said, we're cousins, and so family, and plus we're good friends outside of that anyway, and so. Um, sharing information is pretty common to do. But then, with a diagnosis like this, how did you guys approach it? Like, who did you tell, or how did you tell them, and when did you share this information with your, family? Uch Nyoshije, right? So, like, I'm in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Midwest, and you're on the East
Now,
Coast, so
yeah. And
we
you
would
remember,
communicate with our cousins, but like
yeah.
your immediate family nearby that will see Edison, that will spend time with Edison. Like, how did you guys approach that?
Yeah. Well, I remember, like, because, well, I have a niece who's the same age as Edison. They're like 2 months apart, and
Mhm,
so you can see like the difference between the two. One was like
mhm,
growing with language, and then Edison was just again off to himself, very just he doesn't want to socialize with others. And like I remember sharing it with my brother and my sister-in-law before his diagnosis, like as we were in the process,
mhm,
and like I've already like was seeing some of these signs, and I was telling them like, my son, like, I was telling him that he was going to be tested for autism, and I shared with them like how he wasn't talking yet, um, and so we wanted to get him tested for that. And I shared with my mom. I shared my journey with my mom, and I told her, like my mom is very traditional,
mhm,
and I told her, how I worried about him not talking or socializing with others, and that he wasn't reaching like the milestones, and growing the way that he should, compared to like my niece, and I was just like, I was thankful that she was very caring and encouraging. Like she'll say,
mhm,
"Oh, nhà tu lỡ chi chua," like look. "Danger." So,
Mhm.
"Luma," the news, "Hi,
Mhm.
goodbye," and I'm like, "Okay, maybe that's it," but,
Yeah. 'Cause
like,
moms know best, right? Our
yeah.
mothers. You always think that, right? And then, you
Like, they
know,
were never, like, negative about it,
that's good.
but after his diagnosis, I did inform my mom and my family, and I was like, "Yeah, he's autistic," and, they were still very loving, and I try to explain to my mom, but I don't know how to, because it's so
Mhm.
and they don't understand it, but,
Right.
yeah, one day I was just like, "Hey, mom, was there?" Because I know, like, I've been, like, looking, and they said, like, sometimes it could be, like, a genetic thing, right?
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
I was like, "Mom, is there, like," I was just thinking, like, in family-wise, was there any family
Mhm.
that didn't know how, like, had a speech delay, or
Yeah.
just that I noticed in our family that had speech delay. Like, I couldn't think of anybody in our Yang side, but, like, my lower side,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
I was asking my mom about, like, a few cousins. Like, we had, I don't remember if you remember, B Lee. He was, my, Po Po Na's son. Remember?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, but he's passed away a long time ago, and he
Mhm.
I can't remember. I was too young to remember how
Mhm.
he was when I was a kid, but I remember he struggled with socialization and,
Okay.
like, and
Yeah.
talking, and then, just just a few cousins that I could remember, and I would ask my mom, and she was just like, "Oh, I don't know. I really don't know if they were born like that or something happened to them, and then they,
Mhm.
I was like, Mom, it's kind of like that where I was telling my mom, like, he's like not very good at socializing. He likes to be by himself, and he is struggling with talking, but she's like, it's okay. Um, he's very smart, and I think
Mhm.
like I mean, they don't treat him any differently, but I don't think
Mhm.
my mom truly understood it, but I think because
Right.
she sees how smart he is,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, he knows,
His
like, his
brilliance,
numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
just in comparison to my niece and him, like, she's super, super social and talkative, and she's like, go girl, like, she's so active, and
Mhm.
like, Edison's like just to himself, but, like, when he's
Yeah.
by himself, like, my mom see him, like, matching letters,
Yeah.
or, like, I was like, "What's this number?" He'll touch it, and he'll,
Mhm.
just stuff like that. She's like, "Wow," like,
Yeah.
impressive, and, um,
Or
because
playing, a song on the xylophone by
yeah,
memory. Like, you
yeah,
never taught it to him, he just did it. I was
yeah.
there for that,
I
yeah.
know. He does just stuff that surprises me every day. Like, I'm like, "Did
Mhm.
you really?" And I try to get my phone out to record half the things, and then I
Oh,
either enjoy the moment and forget, or, like, I'm
yes.
too late, or he sees the phone and he stops. I'm like, "Oh," but yeah, I mean, like, he's very
Yeah.
smart, and so I think, like, they know, like, how Hmong people, like, "Oh, good thing you're," but they don't call my son that because they see how intelligent he is, and they think,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
it's more of a speech delay, or that
Okay.
he just don't wanna talk yet. That's how they see it right now.
Yeah.
Um, but, yeah.
Well, Lunda, it's very hurtful.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're saying that you've never
I've
experienced anyone
yeah,
saying that
I've
to you.
not
That's
experienced it,
good. Okay.
um, but yeah, and he learns very quickly, and
Mhm.
so, I mean, I've shared everything, that he does with my mom, because, I do want her to know that just because he's nonverbal doesn't mean he's not intelligent, and that,
Absolutely.
um and I can consider myself blessed that my family, they love my son regardless, and
Mhm.
they adore him, and, like, my in-laws are the same way. My in-laws are very traditional, and
Mhm.
so, but they love him so much, and, like,
That's good.
when we visit them, like, they never judge him. They know, like, he don't talk, but, like, they just be like, like, "Plunita the hall," and they're like, "Oh, me too, mama,"
Mhm.
just they're just so sweet
Yeah.
to him, and they're just Luna, and I'm really grateful for that, and I know they're concerned about it, because they'll say, like, "Hi, Lune," but they don't
Mhm.
ever say anything hurtful towards, like, I've not heard of them saying anything hurtful towards him, or about him, not
Mhm.
just more like, just they think he's so funny because, I mean, obsessed with the hungry caterpillar. So every time we
Yes.
go to my in-laws' house, like what's the first thing he does is runs to the TV, gets a remote, and asks for the hungry caterpillar, and they just laugh and laugh,
Uh-huh.
and but they enjoy, his who he is, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Kristen, this I don't know which question to ask you next because there's so many segues we could do, but I'll start with this. You said you had talked about, "Các hai một ly trà, các thêm một ly trà cho cất nhà," which is good pao,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
love her. She is amazing. I'm not gonna tell a story about how she was one of the first family member to see me when I was born. It'll make me cry, but I love her. I think Lucia Dopo, she's
Yeah.
amazing. But in the Hmong culture, developmental disability is not well understood. Takachimolalu especially, right? That's something that
Yeah,
we've been talking
yeah.
about for the last 2 years. Like, okay, how do we explain this to the older generation? Takalalu autism, Bechimoilalu, to explain it or to replace it. We just have words to explain it, but even that's, there's shortcomings to that. So developmental disability is not well understood. There are many misconceptions, and oftentimes the older generation may have old wives tell interpretations of why a child was born with a disability. Or did something happen? So have you experienced this where they came at you with like, oh, no, or how you know and if it's okay, I want to share that, growing up, we grew up, traditional,
Yeah.
a shamanism practicing family. And then in this last decade, your family converted to Christianity, right?
Mhm.
And so even then, those wives' tales still get said
Yeah.
out there. So has anybody ever said like, oh, tejo, you really know, or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, my in-laws, they had this thing where they were saying like, "Oh, nuchito hailuke, she well, head nupo hailua," like they they had mentioned, which
She,
I didn't quite understand it, but she had
okay,
said like, you can, um, for example, if you give him like a used spoon from a family gathering,
okay,
that he eats from that used spoon, or I don't know,
mhm,
just something with the used spoon, that it would help him talk because of
okay.
all the mouths that have, I don't know. Like,
And
I
you're
don't
like,
know what
oh my gosh,
the
there's a lot of germs.
yeah,
Sorry, when you said used spoon, my OCD
I
germaphobe kicked
know.
on. I was like,
When she
"Oh,
and I'm like, "Did she really just say that give him an old spoon that people's been licking and just give it to him?" But yeah,
okay,
like she said, like, that might
okay,
help, and she's heard that
yeah."
that had worked in the past, and we've never
We need
tried
to
it.
let
Like,
we need to let scientists know this because that sounds like an easy fix if that's
no,
true.
yeah, so we tried it, but yeah,
Okay.
she has mentioned that before. Um,
Mhm,
and then I remember the time when you guys came down for the wedding, and your mom
mhm,
was here. I remember I think you heard it when she was talking about like um she's like, if do you have like is your father have your father-in-law passed away? And I was like, no, my husband's grandpa has passed away a few years
mhm.
back. And she said, because your son, like your mom was like, your son doesn't look like he, like he's one that would just not talk. He seems like he has a handsome little face, and he doesn't seem, because sometimes people think that they should look the way,
Oh,
like how they
yep,
look, like they should have a look to them, right? Because they don't
right,
talk,
yes,
or they're
yes.
different. So your mom was like, he doesn't, he looks so handsome. So something might just be like closing his mouth, and like your mom was saying, like, maybe if like when your someone passed away, like your husband's grandpa passed away, sometimes they may have closed their mouth so that your child um they don't want something to be spoken, right? Or something like that.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know, was you here to hear that?
I'm so like, especially when it
Oh,
comes to autism, I'm very scientifically based, right? And just kind of like how you said, you're not sure how to explain it to them, right? And it's
yeah.
like the person that birthed you, and of course, like you know, but like how do you
Uh-huh.
explain that to them so that they
Yeah.
understand on the level that you are like scientifically, this is what it means, but then they're kind of going off on their own knowledge, and
Yeah.
and some of that is based so heavily on those old wives' tale that you're like, they're so convinced it must be true. Like the old spoon thing, like they're so convinced that if you just, you know, like pass the spoon around to every person at this event and then give it to your son, ooh, he's gonna talk tomorrow. Like they're so convinced, right? Or maybe if they're not so convinced, they're like, it's worth trying. You're going,
Yeah.
not sure. So I don't know. That's the hard part for me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of straddling, you know, the traditional and then the, you know, modern side of science.
Mhm.
So I don't recall hearing that, but I believe you for sure. So you know that kind of like segues to my next question, and we probably already addressed this, but I want to just lay it out there. So then, how do you explain to the older generation about "Katu mito" when they ask? And also, Kristen, do they inquire politely? "Len ba nung ka?" When they ask, "Hi," like they're genuinely interested to know, and they're compassionate, and they're like, "Oh, like kunya hi." Got them ito, you know, nandito, jonday, hello, chitawe, you know, like, is it like that? Or have you experienced where they may have said some choice words? And I'm so happy to hear, again, I'm gonna try not to cry. We talked about Lalu Ilalu. I don't even like to say it because it's so unkind, right? And it's not even the right word.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that, you know, we have had some other moms share that their kids have been called that. And I can imagine how heartbreaking that is. And I'm really grateful that you haven't had to experience that, you know, and that's great. But, like, how do you explain to them when they do ask? Or even if they're asking nicely, but, like, they're limited by what they know to call
Yeah.
in the Hmong language, basically Moilalu for developmental disability. You know,
Yeah.
like ilalu, it's like sentences, but Chimoke rely on ilalunde, right? But then
Mhm.
it's not a kind word. So have you like I don't know, how do you explain to them? How do you coach them? How do you help them to understand? Not like that's your job, but if they
Yeah.
inquire and if they do inquire politely, compassionately, how do you usually deal with that?
Yeah. Well, luckily I haven't had a lot of people ask, and I've definitely not had a lot of impolite people asking about my son. I and one big thing is I don't go out in the Hmong community a lot anyways. Like I'm
Yeah,
very closed with positive people, and the people that I surround myself with are people that I trust my son around or my kids around. So
yeah.
that's just my family and like a few people that I work with, that I trust, um and they're not someone that I can trust my son around with. And usually when they question my son, it doesn't affect me as much because that
Mhm.
person is not a part of my son's life.
Yes.
And so, um, like, if and when like a Hmong older generation asked or said something, most of the time, I listen, I let them have their words, and I just smile and nod, whatever they're saying. And depending on what they say, I usually just respond with a simple like "Nichito halu that she nichi," that word like "nichitwa," you know, like, and I hate that
Mhm.
because it's just
So you
he's
say
not,
that
you know.
Nchitoa to
Yeah, I
them.
mean, like, no, he's not. Like, because that's what Mongo
Mhm.
said. So I'm gonna tell them like he's
Yeah.
intelligent,
Yeah.
and I start naming the things he can do. My son can he knows his letters,
Good.
he knows his, and
Mhm.
so like I start like throwing everything out that I love about my son,
Yeah.
and I just tell them straight out, he may not know how to talk, but this is what he does know. And I tell them all the things that I love about him. I you know I But the funny thing is I think I have more kids than adults like ask about my son than
Mhm.
because they're not they're most kids are younger, they don't or when they see like a kid that is, different, they're like, "What's wrong with him?" And so I have more kids come up to me more so than like the older generation. Like again, like
Yeah.
I don't really hang out a lot with like Dinding Law. Like when we have like
Mhm.
eating outs and stuff, it's usually just family, and they already know my son, or they already like I've already told them like my son is may not talk, but he does know this and this. Like I tell them, like this
Mhm.
is what my son can do, but most of the time it's more like kids, and even like my nieces, even my daughter, they're still
Mhm.
questioning these things because he is different, and he doesn't with the three of them. They play, and they're so. I mean, they're so I have two nieces, and well,
Mhm.
three, but my oldest niece, she's 14, so she's not really like in that little group
Right.
that's growing up, and my two nieces and my daughter, they play all the time, hide and seek, laugh and play, and sometimes that you can see like they're like Edison's just he totally ignores them like they're not there, and but they love him, they adore him, they're like, "Oh, Edison's so
Yeah.
cute, Edison's so smart, oh,
Yeah.
Edison," and he doesn't respond, he doesn't care, and they have a few times like, "Auntie, why doesn't he talk? Like, Auntie, why doesn't he
Mhm.
play with us? Like, Auntie, why
Yeah.
does he just want to sit there?" And like a lot, like I have more of that from like
Yeah.
my nieces and things like that, and even my daughter, like even at home, she's like, "Mommy, why does he do that?"
Mhm.
And you really have to just tell them, that he. And I'm like, I don't have to explain it to my daughter yet, but I just tell him like he has a different brain, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
like it's like you and a lot of other kids, you guys have like a normal brain, and then Edison has this different brain where he is very smart in his own way, and he knows
Mhm.
what you guys are saying and doing, but it's hard for him to play with you and hard for him to talk, right? And
Mhm.
that's why, and I always tell her like that's why you have to be patient with him, because it
Yeah.
is hard. It's really hard. And we can dive into this later too, to raise a child with autism versus a child with not, that's not autistic, because I spend so much of my time with my son, to the point where
Mhm.
my daughter is just like, do you love me, mommy? I'm like, yeah, you
Oh,
know,
Eleanor,
but
yes.
yeah, like but it is hard because a lot of the kids, they will be like, why doesn't he talk or play, because they want to play with
Mhm.
him, he's so cute.
Yeah.
He goes to daycare, so like the kids there are like, oh, he's just a baby, and then the teacher like, no, 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 he's not a baby, he's four just like you. So we just have to remind people, like, no, he's
Yeah.
not a baby. He's the same age as you are,
Mhm.
And so yeah, I just tell them, like, I usually just tell the kids like he likes to be alone, or he's not talking yet.
Mhm.
But like more towards my daughter, like your brother is different, and you're gonna have to be more patient with him, and
Mhm.
things like that. But yeah. Um
Yeah, so you had mentioned earlier too, with autism, unlike Down syndrome, right? Like if your child has a
Mhm.
diagnosis of Down syndrome, like it's physically obvious, right? And then with autism, I've heard that a lot like that. Oh, but he looks normal.
Mhm.
That hurts my heart. They say you look normal, and
Mhm.
it's like, well, it's internal. And then also too, I've heard just from a few other close mom friends and relatives, they'll say they would rather 이등로 와 이등이요 이었자민지 they would that specific person said, I would rather tụi nâng lòng nữ lần nó cô cho rong hay thế oh cái tụi mình sai cái tụi mình tu mò ra chị à nếu mò ra chị à instead of just ignoring it and just kind of like pretend like it's not even there like that. Well, how do you feel about that? Like, does what are your thoughts either way? Would you rather they acknowledge, like, hey, he's a little different, but he's so smart, or just kind of ignore the whole fact that he is different, but so smart?
Oh, like,
Threw you for a loop. That wasn't on the question list.
yeah, like I don't really know, because like I said, like I've not had a lot of that experience,
That's good.
but but So I mean, honestly, either way,
Okay,
I
yeah.
either just prefer them ignoring it, or I mean, like I'm really like me, I'm very just whatever people throw at me, I'm just like, yeah, or I'll, but like with my son, I mean, either way, if they said
Mhm.
something like that, I would just straight up tell them, how I felt, or if they just ignore it and don't ask, then it doesn't hurt my feelings either.
Yeah. So, we talk about how you and your family converted to Christianity in the last decade. Do you feel like your faith played a role in how you understood and accepted the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis?
I
Like
think,
if you guys hadn't, and of course we can't go back and change
yeah,
anything, but like, do you feel like your faith helped you to embrace it, to accept it in a different way? Had you not?
I mean, I think definitely it is helpful because I mean, I think my faith, um like with me being Christian, versus like shaman, you know how like shaman just has so much things, I feel like it's so depressing. And so like they are they it's so much things, like they always like, oh, it's because of this and this and this, whereas like because I'm a Christian and I don't have those old wives tales in my head to think and like, oh, this could be it or this is why, and try to fix it. I'm not trying to fix it.
Mhm.
I'm a
Yeah.
Christian, and I don't have those in the back of my head like, "Hey, it's not gonna work," because he's autistic. And so like knowing that, it is helpful. But I don't consider my faith as like the the reason why uh, I've accepted it better. I think it's more of like just my experience with kids with autism, and so I just think just being knowledgeable about their diagnosis, and taking that first leap to getting my son the help that he needs, for me was just the motherly thing to do for my son, but like it's just really how you as a parent see it. Do you believe in what everybody's telling you to do, or are you going to just say, this is autism, I can't fix it, but what can I do to make my child's life easier? What can I do
Mhm.
to uh, help my son? So that's just
Yeah,
a different aspect of how your mind, what you think. you know
absolutely. We do hear a lot of that too, right? Some moms will share, they told us to on and call, right?
Mhm,
We did
mhm.
all the ceremonies, we did all the things, still has autism. And then we have some Christian moms who were like, we did all the praying, we went to church, we did all the things, still has autism, right? So it's kind of like, okay, that maybe we should look at it from a scientific point of view. So then that segues to my next question, Kristen. Did you feel that your medical teams provided you with a level of support you needed to make informed treatment decisions? 'Cause like you said, this was during the pandemic, during COVID, when everything was shut down, and like they would only see if it was like super severe, because of a risk of exposure. So like during that time, do you feel like there were any barriers, or how was your experience with your medical team?
um with my the medical team, like I've mentioned before, my son's doctor at first was saying like, oh, some boys develop slower and
Mhm.
just hold off, but like every doctor's visit, I'm like, I'm voicing
Yeah,
my concern. And so
yeah. Starting
um
from maybe, like, his 9-month
mhm,
checkup and
yeah,
onward. Yeah.
yeah. Like, so his doctor, like, okay, they went ahead and put a referral for him to be tested. And like from there, I just felt like the team was very knowledgeable because
Good.
they work in these field, they know, they see it, and they're just very helpful with resources and who to turn to, what to do. And like my son was getting speech at the time when he was starting from like I'd say like starting from like a year and a half or so.
Mhm.
He was already starting speech therapy. It was hard at first because he's so little, and they were, like with speech, with anything, their therapy, they want that child to trust them first. So it was a lot of playing,
Sure.
and at that
Yeah.
time he was like, "Nope, I'm not playing with you," because he's so little, and he was like,
Yeah.
just not social enough to like, nope, I'm not gonna listen to you or do anything. So it was just all getting to know his therapist at the time. But currently, my son is enrolled in pre-K, where the teachers there have experience with students with special needs, and his teachers has been so amazing. And he like
It
her.
helps that you're a teacher at that school.
Yes, I'm a teacher at that school, so it's been so helpful. I just like when I
Yeah.
on my break, I just run down and peek to see how he's doing. But
Oh.
yeah,
But, like,
he
what do you do if you're not a teacher at your child's school, Kristen? Not
no,
everyone has that privilege.
I don't know. I guess I'll just have to deal with it. I had experience it. But yeah, he right now he is in pre-K where I'm working at, and he has OT and he has speech 2 times a week,
Mhm.
and his speech therapy goes in there constantly and just works on his ACC device with him because he has it in his classroom.
Yeah.
And so they started him on the ACC device, and as soon as he started pre-K last year. So again, like he was only 3 at the time that he started, like he just turned 3,
Mhm.
started pre-K, and within, like, I would say, like within I can't remember when we started him on his ACC device, but as soon as like I mean, we were all impressed with how fast he learned on the ACC device, because he just knew the keys like so fast. Like it took like
Yeah.
his speech therapist like, I don't even know the keys yet, and here he was teaching me how
Yeah.
to use it. But he so my son is trained on the ACC device at school, and
Which
he's
program
been
does he
using it.
use?
Lamp,
LAMP?
or yeah,
Yes.
it was
Yeah, I
lamp.
love LAMP.
Yeah,
LAMP is amazing, but LAMP is complex. It's
yeah,
more like the complex one, but if he's
yeah,
ready for LAMP right out of the gate, man, he's gonna
yeah,
be able to build his vocabulary.
yeah. He's been so good with it that I'm just like, yeah, like and his like teachers, like we just communicate with him with that, and like they were just very shocked because like he will come in with his device. I didn't teach him anything, and they'll be like,
Mhm.
did you teach him this? And they're like, we were reading a story, and he was going to the app, and he was looking at the words of the stories that were in the, like, if they were doing a story, he'll go and look for the word in
Mhm.
the story, or and things like that. I'm like, no, actually I
Yeah.
didn't. He did that himself, and so it
Yes.
was just so like this summer, like my goal was, because that last year he was just using like one word. He'll just
Mhm.
find one word to communicate. But this summer, I've been teaching him to use like complete sentences. So, like, if
Yeah.
he asks for something, and if he's like, eat or hungry, I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, let's try using a sentence. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to eat. And so he's been
Wow.
putting down, like, it's so precious. He just be like, I want to eat cheeseburger, please, mommy. And I made, I asked him to
Oh.
say, please, mommy. It used to just be, I
Yeah.
want to eat cheeseburger. So I'm like,
Yes.
we're gonna teach him some manners. Please,
Yeah.
mommy. And so, like, every time he asks for something, it's always please, mommy. But
Please,
there's
mommy.
also
Yeah.
daddy on there, Eleanor on there. So he'll ask them
Yeah.
sometimes, please, Eleanor. So
Oh, you can't say no to that anymore. He's figured it out.
yes.
I'm really happy to hear that the AZ device has kinda opened up that communication with him and with you guys, and, we talked about that in my previous episode about
Yeah.
speech with Miss Blue, that, like, the device would not make your child lazy, it would just build their vocabulary, and Inuna, we don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Wouldn't it be amazing, right, Kristen, one day for
Oh
him
yeah.
just to, like, for you to hear him say all the words that all things he's wanted to say these last few years, and,
Hmm.
like, why would you withhold that from him, right? By
Yeah.
not by
Yeah.
your own, I guess, I don't think you have them, but by your own insecurities about what the lamp device is about or the AC it's about, like
Yeah.
fearing that that's replacing their voice. Like, no, that's going to amplify their voice even more until they're ready, right? And so, yeah, thank you so much for sharing everything. I have one last question for you. what are some things that you want others to know about your son? Like, what are your hopes and dreams for him? He's 4, and the sky is the limit. You know, one of my very first clinical directors, she would say that. And at the time, when I was still like an infancy in the ABA field, I was like, what does it even mean? The sky's the limit. And as over the last 16 years, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now when he's 14. And when I treatment plan with parents, I always go, I'm not even thinking about, well, I am, of course, thinking about your 4-year-old, but I'm also thinking about your 40-year-old child. Like, what do we want to see then? How do we build the blocks to get them there, right? So I'm sure you thought about that as
Oh yeah,
who's going to take care of him? Who's going to, when he's an adult, when he's not in school anymore, all those things. So, like, anything that you want to share with us about Mr. Edison and your hopes and dreams for him, and
yeah, he's
I'd love
visiting
to hear him
now.
make a sentence for me. Yeah,
Yes,
I'd love to hear him make a sentence for me. What did he say? Oh, he wants YouTube.
yeah, he wants me to get something on YouTube. So I says, "What is it, buddy? That
Hey, buddy,
no,
you gotta ask your mommy.
here's
Use your
what's funny.
sentence.
What's funny is right now he's trying to find something in Chinese.
Oh my
So he's
goodness.
like, so he's like looking at like this Chinese language, and it doesn't find it, and it can't find it for him. So he's like, "I'm mom. Why is it not? Why can't I not watch it?"
Oh,
I
that's
don't
so
get so
interesting. I had a client who was really obsessed with the Russian language. And so
yeah.
his mom's like, so he learned about the Russian language last night. He learned about the planets in Russian. I'm like, buddy, Miss Tia can't help you. Okay. I don't know Russian. I'm glad you do, but I don't. So it's amazing how they pick up on things and you're like, that's really interesting. Now I have to go teach myself these things. So yeah,
That's
anything
like
you
that
would like,
all the time. Like, um,
oh,
he's into the solar system too. So I
yeah.
didn't know. Like I know I'm a teacher, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't know about planets. It's not in my curriculum. I don't teach the solar system yet in second grade. It's in third grade. So he was like naming. He wanted me to name the planets in order because he already knows them, and I'm like,
Okay.
he's like, no, he's like screaming at me like that's not right, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to learn like the planets
Yeah.
just so I can please
Yeah.
him with that, and so,
Oh, you had
but
to go
yeah,
Google it, didn't you? You're like, "I don't know."
yeah, but yeah, there's so many wonderful things about my son that I could
Yeah,
share, but firstly, one thing I want to say to parents is just, don't give up on your child, verbal or nonverbal, and like whatever they struggle with, just help them adjust to it, overcome it, help them learn to regulate their feelings, their thoughts, and like the most important thing is learn them. What triggers them, what helps them calm down, learn their body language, what do they want, need, because the most important thing is like we do, I think like a lot, and I don't, I think sometimes we just expect like our SLPs, our OTs, our ABA therapists to tackle these things, and then, but the important thing is at home. We are their parents, and we really have to um, to be there for them. Like you are their parent, and if not you, then who, right? Because I mean,
mhm,
they're with you for the most part, and so I know it's not easy. It's not. It's very challenging. It's draining. It
yeah,
makes you wonder, like, if am I good enough? Am I a good enough parent?
you
But
are,
one
you
thing
are,
that I keep in my mind, ever since I found out his diagnosis, like one thing that I tell myself every day is, did I do everything that I could to help my child be the best today? And so, just like my son is nonverbal, and that concerns me as a parent, and um, but my son is also has all these great things about him. He's intelligent, he's amazing. He has great memorization. Like I'm like,
yeah,
goodness, child. Like he remembers every road. Like if we're going to grandma's house, every turn he knows.
yeah,
Going to
uh-huh.
school, you can't pass a McDonald's because he knows where they are. He'll point and he'll want some fries. It's
Oh
like
goodness.
you know, there's, and um, he just knows, you know, the thing that I love most about raising a child with autism is celebrating his every wins. It's like it's very
Yes.
different. Like again, I've mentioned like it's different raising my daughter and my son,
Mhm.
because we celebrate his every wins. Like
Yeah.
I know with our neurotypical babies, we celebrate like their first walk, oh, their first word, their first teeth. But like with our babies with
Mhm.
autism, it's like we celebrate everything literally, like
Yeah.
their first
Yeah.
sentence, not just their first word, their
Mhm.
first sentence.
Mhm.
The first time they went to the potty, because it's
Yeah.
whoa, a challenge, like way
Yes.
more challenging. And like um just the first time that they picked up a spoon and fed themselves. Like we
Mhm.
celebrate every little thing, and it's like every day we celebrate something that they did that they didn't before, because they
Mhm.
surprise us every day. So I just scream with joy when my son does stuff like out of nowhere. I'm like, what did he just do that? And sometimes I question it
Yeah.
myself. I'm like, I'll ask my husband or my daughter, did you type that on his ACC device? Did you type it? Like, no, why would I? I'm
Yeah.
like, did he do it? Like we're so
Yeah.
surprised by the things that he does. And it's just like unbelievable. Like just recently, like my son, he's like, his one of his favorite song in Hmong, right?
Okay.
Dang Tao Lane Montasia. Have you heard that?
Okay. No, Kristen, I
What
don't listen to Hmong music.
Yeah, well, my husband, he listens to Hmong music all the time, and like when we're on road trips, that's what we listen to.
Yeah.
Hmong music.
Okay.
His most favorite is Ling Mo Dai Xia, right? And so
Oh.
he knows how to spell Ling Mo Dai Xia
Oh my
on his
gosh.
yeah in Hmong. I'm like, one
Wow.
day I was just like, he was mad because he couldn't find it, and so I was like, "What's
Uh-huh.
wrong, bud?" And I went to go look at his iPad, and
Yeah.
he put Ling Mo Dai Xia. I'm like, "Did you what?" He did it twice, and I watched him, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my, he can spell Hmong. I can't even spell Hmong."
Wow.
It's so hilarious. It's so fun to watch
Wow.
them do these
Yeah.
things and like, like celebrate everything. And but yeah, we do. We celebrate everything new with him.
Yeah.
And he's just like either the happiest kid in the world or like you've upset him. You've upset him.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, and like it's like my dream for him in the long run is just to be able to live in this world with no struggles and just be happy in life. I think
Mhm.
that's all what we want for our kids, and
Yeah.
so with our kids with autism, we have to work harder because, I mean, like I think that's one of the most hurtful things. Like, okay, my daughter, she's very smart, she's very social, she can find friends, she can, but what about my
Mhm.
son?
Yeah.
He's not social. He don't care for people, And so, would he make friends? Is there going to be people like we've mentioned these before? Like, we're not going to be here forever, And
Yeah.
so, what do we want for our kids? We got to teach them how to be without us. Honestly, we have to
Mhm.
teach them to um, cook for themselves, and those daily life things. And so, I think like just for my son, I just want him to be able to live in this world with no struggles and just be happy. But
Yeah. I just had, my baby last year, and it wasn't
yeah,
until last year, right, last year, and this year, I was like, "Ooh, I'm 40, and I just had a baby, so if I wanna see my son be 40, I just have to live to 80," and that was a really depressing thought. 'Cause, I was like, it's basic math, and, so as either linear, you always think about that, right? Like, who's gonna love my child?头骨鸡鸟了, and, it's harder too, and you think, "Okay, um, if not you or your husband or Eleanor, who's it gonna be?" And it's, a journey, and I appreciate you sharing, Kristen, and just being transparent and vulnerable and just I bet I wanna say 110% of things that you shared, I bet other parents, other home parents, mothers out there are like, "I've had those exact same thoughts," and I
yeah,
think too the journey can be lonely sometimes, and that is exactly why we started the group and I started the podcast because I was like, "I just want it to reach that one person out there that feels like they are alone on this journey. No one understands. No one has these thoughts. No one can help them. I want them to know that there's help. There are others who have gone through it, are going through it, and I'm just grateful to have
Yeah.
you as I hope that you feel like you have me as an ally to anytime you have any questions, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Anybody listening, really, I'm happy to answer anything to the best of my abilities. And if I don't have an answer for you, I will help you get an answer. So,
Yeah.
what y'all?
Thank
Thank you
you
so
for having
much.
me.